Hello, everybody. Welcome to Total Hygiene, Mind, Body, and Soul Maintenance. Today, you'll be here with me, Michelle Turner, for Total Hygiene, and I have a special guest by the name of Mr. Mitchell,
Yeah.
and we'll be talking today about the subject that when we was talking about kind of putting notations with misinformation in our schools for our children so that they can quit being misguided. Um, there was an instance where saw at a college where Mr. Charles Darwin was spoke of, and where I don't want to uh, look as if I'm some kind of debunker or anything, because that is the word they're using, or some kind of qualified person to discredit someone's work. However, I think you'll be purely entertained when I let you know about his upcomings, his genetics, his surroundings, his mother, father, grandfather, and where he came from, and the Cambridge College population was pretty much done by the Darwin family back then in the 1800s. And their popularity pretty much substantiated um, education, um, whether the doctor was worth his weight or not. And if you came from that college, they pretty much ran things. They were the aristocrats back then. And there was a lot of pressure back in the 1800s. He was born in 1809, and he comes from a lineage of people who did abolition work to end slavery, such as his grandfather, Aramus Darwin. There was also his dad, who was also a doctor. Um, his mom did pottery. She came from a family who did pottery and whatnot and things. And then there came Mr. Darwin, who was notated as a child, Mr. Mitchell, who was kind of wayward,
Mhm.
mischief, mischievous.
Yes. But
And
he also had a higher level of intelligence than his people before him.
they had him in there for intelligence. Yes, they did. But I will put for a fact, none of his work was implicated before the book he wrote, 50, well, it was 59, 1859 when the book came out. He sat on it for 20 years. And every time he tried to put in exhibits for his findings, because there was already research for evolution,
Hmm.
but his work, whenever he tried to substantiate something because of his namesake or add it there, it wasn't accepted because they came up during a time where religion was respected.
Right.
And so creation was the belief.
Hmm.
And so when you look at that, the shift came swiftly.
But he had a multitude of conflicts with the say religious world because
Yes.
most of the statements of creation clashed with the time span of evolution.
That's interesting.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. All I know is what's in the books, and I know that his faith wavered quite a bit. He didn't have very much of it, especially when he lost his oldest daughter.
Mhm. Well, according to how he did and researched with anthropological studies that use the measurements of the human anatomy and the skull work and so on and so forth, and the carbon dating, which wasn't accurate at that time. But
No.
to say that there was a missing link, there was a change from one state of Homo sapien to another, to another, it's so much to say that even when man dispersed himself from the cradle, um, uh, say the cradle of civilization, I just put it like that, or the motherland, whatever you want to call it, and dispersed himself around the world, there were genetic and physical changes that took place when people traversed the lands, when they went to different hemispheres on the planet. Now, he chose in particular those fossils or the skeletons that he could choose, that he could name and produce his theories from in the manner in which he did.
Yes, sir. And may I inject there? The um the fossils you speak of was not his expertise either, but that
Mm,
what he was under the leadership of other
mm,
anthropologists and
mhm,
people who did that fossil work.
mhm,
His was taxidermy actually in
mhm,
the beginning, and then he became a naturalist.
mhm,
So
okay.
he was grafting plants and understanding their growth and adaptation to being genetically engineered,
Mhm, mhm,
basically,
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
and looking and studying genetic codes
okay.
and how you were saying the missing link, you're talking about that strand that just never fit in
Mhm, mhm,
because they were saying we came like I like how they did that with the cartoon from Hollywood, Miss Mermaid.
okay.
We were never a fish,
Right.
but they say we're mammals, and then they came up with us being um, from that. They were trying to use, ladies and gentlemen, the information from
Mhm,
perhaps I think I'm not sure of the very first study, but I know today modernly they talk generally about a bacteria being introduced to a
mhm,
gene code and how they
okay.
had done this this one example with the jellyfish and the bacteria they used, it also was like a what you call it, a glowing light in the jellyfish.
Translucent.
So
Yeah.
they became one. But the thing about that, and when they still say you cannot say that part of the information is true about evolution, because now you've joined two things together. Now that DNA is going to read everything, not just the one and then
Mm,
the other. It's going to
okay.
read as one element
Mhm,
now, you know? And so you can dissect it all you want, but and so when they talk about also, as I wanted to jump back here to the um the gene coding and things, when we was talking about the missing link, the thing we need to really pay attention to is even in the Bible, it speaks of uh, not of sexual abominations. Okay,
mhm,
and they were saying that we got all these different types of humans before they got to the Homo sapiens, which is what they call us. Okay,
mhm,
and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it is kind of humorous to me. But to call me something I'm not, you know. So I'm a Homo sapien. If that's what a human being is, okay, I'll take that. But I'm not a monkey. So when you have back in the Bible, or even in history to this day, people having relations with stuff they're not supposed to. We were just talking about the genetic coding.
Mhm.
That will give you Lucy. Okay.
Mhm.
That has nothing to do with my grandmama. That's
Mhm.
not my ancestor.
Well, I would say that even though we know
GPS
as
signal lost.
might
I
have been
thought
my
that
fault.
was,
That might
oh,
have been my phone.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
I apologize too. But we may have to understand that there were those who theorized things based on an assumption that the more they could convince people of these things and give a slight appearance of something that would give it factual ability, did not understand that there were those who instinctively knew that we, even if we did evolve, it had to be over some long time spans to come from the process of being primitive minded and then able to do for ourselves in the environments that we were in. And so much so that most of the environments had already had a plethora of things that we use. And in discovering the few other things that were necessary along in life, like maybe breaking a leg and learning how to do those kind of things, even then, it's noted. But because most knowledge is banked up, I just put it like that, banked up, and it's vaulted. And you have to have a certain combination of things to get into that information and have it for your own study, for one thing, because most of it does need to be added to in the areas of how they have maintained a certain perspective.
It is
That
certainly a faith walk, Mr. Mitchell. You're right. It takes, you have to know what you know in order
Mhm.
to read between the lines.
That's true. But now that's in the area of that. I'm talking about like what they have in the modern day
The
curriculums
scrolls and
and
things.
no, in the modern day curriculums that they
Oh,
propose for people to, they have a script that you go through in museums
mhm.
and so on and so forth that states what things are, but they're withholding the information of where it came from, the total knowledge. Okay. So you are giving a limited ability to see, and that's primarily biased by what they have made it to be.
Well, I'll chew on that for half a second, a half a centimeter, and then leave that right there. But whenever in history there was a domineering of a people,
Okay. Very good.
knowledge was owned. And what they didn't want, they, what we use the word today, debunked or thought it unnecessary because it didn't fit into their colonization or the Roman Empire, such as
Mhm.
all the scriptures to the Bible.
Mhm. Mhm.
It doesn't mean it was their scriptures.
Okay.
It means it was around before they even got it.
Correct.
And then they chose what works for them because it probably scared the socks off of them, which is all of the truth. And so certain things were burned. People burn
A
books.
great
Is a
deal.
book
A
they call
great
book
deal.
burning.
A great deal. Yeah.
But the funny thing about truth, it just finds its way right back into the light. So it,
Mhm.
like I don't have 50 books. Well, I do got 66. So let me change what I always say. I don't have 88 books. I just
Mhm.
have the 66 and I have my faith in the Lord and what I call the Holy Ghost, or to to soften it for people the Holy Spirit,
Mhm.
or the Spirit of God. I follow that. However you want to say it. I walk by faith. I don't you there are some gifts of the Spirit because everyone is born with a purpose. Is that you or me? And so everyone is born with a purpose. And so having that said, I need for all of us, and especially our children, I don't care if you're black, white, Indian, Asian, Mexican, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Haitian, American, African, it doesn't matter. Um, you are born with a purpose. And now one of us started as a monk. Now, sometimes we have to just accept that things in society happens to where um aristocrats, fat cats, who are known from like the 14th century, such as his family. That's what
Mhm.
we're looking at. We're taking a look into
Mhm.
his generation of people. All the way back to his granddad and before, go all the way back to, did you know if you look it up, Charlie Chapman was his cousin. Started off at 9 years old because they say, this was a Google fact. I can't footnote this because it's an opinion. They say it was to derail child support. So it was like, you know, and there was silent films back then. And so he had a demand over his head for being such a wayward child and not producing. Flunking out of medical school. He started at 9, you're 15, and you have your father and your grandfather's name. You have your brother has your granddad's name. Cambrian College has weight of the family on it, naming their children after the dormitory for planetarium. Not the theater room, but the theater room where they had arts and theater and
Mhm.
what do you call that?
Well, I think those things were generally done by those who made donations, and they had a level of stature
Exactly.
with the donations that made the schools that they chose to sponsor give them the names for the different
No, they
departments in the
owned
college.
it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
They ran it.
Okay.
They were the
Okay.
doctors, the mayors, the
Mhm.
aristocrat. His family was it.
Mhm.
And he had a name to live up to.
Okay.
So when he flunked out of was it the Edinburgh? I'm sorry.
Hmm.
He went to or flunked out. He flunked out of the medical school. Supposed to have been the best, where all the family goes. And I guess it was embarrassing because they gave him every tool and aid, you better believe, because he was a Darwin. And he was squeamish around blood. He just couldn't cut it.
Oh, okay.
And on top of that, they said when he arrived, they had a school set aside for kids who were rich. Is that me? I'm sorry. I know you see me. Why is he calling? People are funny.
Anyway, um,
So when they sent him to this school, these are the facts that you can get out of an encyclopedia.
mm,
The very first instructor he had at this school was a black man by the name of John Edmonstone, not John Helmsworth, that everybody gives him credit for. It was a black man that used to be a slave who studied taxidermy, which is stuffing birds and animals and things.
mhm,
And he even told him about the Galapagos Islands
okay.
and gave him mounds and mounds of information about all his voyages he used to make with his master and his master's nephew, which was around his age. And all those voyages he had information and education of and his
Mhm.
paperwork. Then there came a period of long story short, and we're almost at the end, where how do I say this? His work he kept trying to prove. He was trying to put his own little twist to it
Mhm. Right, right,
and
right,
make it
right,
his
right,
own
right, right.
so that he can be recognized. And it was never accepted for years.
Mhm.
So then over here, and I'm so sorry to say this, but it's the truth. Years later, you're 50-ish. Your cousin's calling in a favor for a governor,
Okay.
and you have this book
Mhm.
in 1859. It is published. Now, I don't know just how about they waited on this and how you, I don't know what the word, propagated this information and stuff. Um, it said we came from said monkeys and that there was different species and fish and stuff.
Mhm.
And the information that you had, you never actually learned it anyway because you weren't taking school so seriously. And so when you got to learning stuff and you got ambitious and everything, you kept getting it wrong because there are other scientists and you got used to being entitled and being heard, but it was never accepted. So you held that book for 20 years,
Excuse
and the
me.
person whose work you were using was never seen again. They didn't keep up with Black people back then. And so there is a place in historical notes where you're supposed to note John Edmonstone when his name is mentioned, Charles Darwin, when you talk about those finches.
Mhm.
Finches are more than just on Galapagos Islands, but that's where all your work went. And as well as your family was, pretty much of your work was there until if you young, one more time.
Excuse me. Well,
And all of his work was none of his work was substantiated until that favor was called in and they wanted to say that that boy could stay in the zoo because he wasn't human. That there was that primate stuff and how he didn't develop yet into a full human being. And then in 1865 is where the supremacy came in with the KKK. And then I heard someone intellectually speaking about the three-fifths of a human. They didn't say we were three-fifths. They said the slaves were. So you couldn't own anything. So all that stuff, the Jim Crow laws and all that tied in that time era. So all that misinformation, and then you became deemed father of evolution. And then all the way to 2025 today, your own entity is saying it's not real and it's not substantiated. It's impossible. There's no way. It doesn't fit in. The fossils don't add up. Um, when you get from the fish to the ground, the fossil work doesn't add up. The gene node in the fossils um are what they are,
mhm.
and
Through genetics, very little can be proven to state as a fact what he was proposing. For the simple matter that
what
there
do you
were
mean?
there were there were genetic lines from the primordial first amoebas or mm,
The bacteria.
bacteria, amoebas, or single cell organisms and so forth that did develop and change and transition. And from at one point, they became so many various animals. And then those supposedly under his uh, uh, uh,
You
specifications or
They was never found.
generalizations, you
Mhm.
understand? They came up, and he'd have been better going to Australia, where they had so many mutations that
He tr
changed and went through the ability to go from water to land and so on and so forth.
he tried, but it still didn't add up because like I said, the fish, once you got the fish, then they tried to say years later frogs, because the amphibians, they lived in the water. It still didn't match.
Mhm.
It still doesn't
Right,
match. The genetic code won't let you lie.
right,
Um, you cannot say that I'm a frog.
right.
You can call me a mammal, but because I don't, I'm not the most genius person in the world, but I'm not a frog.
To the point where they monetize so much information just for the ability to say that it was
That's the point.
widespread. Yeah.
That's the point right there.
Mhm.
Because you wanted to prove something and make a name for yourself. And that's one of the things that
Mhm.
people do in life.
Sure it is.
They
Sure it is.
substantiate things to make a name for themselves, and they don't care who they hurt. You see people
Or who they
blow
disregard.
up, do things just to make a name for
Mhm.
themselves. Even if sometimes I don't even want to say that because there's a lot of suicidal people, but people do stupid stuff just to get famous.
Mhm.
And with his family saying, you know,
You,
you are Darwin, what's
right.
up?
You got to make your place in this world, you understand, so that you are recognized as one of us. And this is true in most of those elite circles, no matter the family.
Oh, you got to prove that one now. I don't know, but if I know
Well,
it's
we'll do that
true
in the
in
continuance.
desperate
We'll do
circles.
that in the continuance so I can specify everything that I'm speaking of.
Yeah,
Maybe in the
because
next
those
broadcast or
elite
so.
people, a lot of people earn where they are,
Hmm.
but we have to give credit to where credit is due. I'm not the type of person to be mad at someone because they have something and I don't.
Oh,
So
well.
it's a lot to be said, and they don't
Hmm.
have to share or give back. That is their right
That's
because it
absolutely right.
wasn't given. So that family though
Hmm.
was known for having their way.
Okay.
They were known for having their way. But the most important thing is it wasn't the most healthy, of mentalities.
Right. Right.
Your child, you can tell by the way he wasn't hungry for knowledge and he was wayward.
And the effects of it is that many people have maybe a little less knowledge because they think that that is the top of the line.
And
And they
yeah,
go and they don't choose to either refute it
right
or
now today,
mhm,
you can't tell. I met someone the other day and he was like, I'm a monkey. I can't, well, I'm not a monkey, but I can. And you can't tell people they didn't come from that. Because they
mhm,
studied,
mhm. Right,
they
right,
take
right, right.
pride in those books, and it doesn't matter whether they're black or white. It's kind of shaky, to say, hey, that information is wrong, but he's the father of evolution. That's shaky, but it is
At the point where
misinformation.
but at the point where he came along, where did he place himself in the evolutionary scale? And that's what was not stated. Because
Well,
as far as sapiens are concerned, I think there's like four
I think it was
status,
like 8, and then some people say more. I don't know. Different kinds of
well, different
humans.
kinds, yeah, like the troglodyte, uh, uh,
Neo, The
Neanderthal.
yes,
Neanderthal.
thank you.
Thank you.
Those.
The Neanderthal, and then there was the Cro-Magnon man, and all those other ones. There, it was so many different eras also that they're talking about. There are spans of time between those evolutionary periods that these um, entities, people, the ones, the no,
Neanderthals.
the skeletal remains were studied to say what they were. There were thousands of years between those for the
Mhm.
man to evolve
And
in.
what I want to point out is there was still a monkey in there somewhere. And people, I'm telling you, people, monkeys look, if they're respecting these things that much, why can't you believe that they was mingling with them? Today they mingle with goats, cows, and it's gross, but it's true. People get close to their dogs.
We call it bestiality.
Oh, see, it's a word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that the real word?
Yeah.
Okay,
But in the
I
Bible
call
it
it an
says in
abomination,
the Bible it says that
sexual abomination,
a woman should not stand
perversion.
before a beast to lay down unto it, and a man should not
Lay with his own kind.
all of those things. You understand?
So you right now. You go there. We can flow, but you okay, bro.
But
So you're absolutely right. People were doing it. Even the Bible is telling you stop doing it.
yeah, we're in the Caucasus Mountains. I'm gonna go this one, and then I'm ready.
What's in the Caucasus Mountain?
In
We
the
can talk.
Caucasus Mountain, when those people were living in those caves, they didn't have any heat. They brought everything in there with them. You understand? So when they lay down and went to sleep, and as
Well,
you
we
know,
can't. I
to
can't
say
prove.
to
I
say
can't.
that whatever was warm,
Huh?
whatever was warm.
Are you trying to say cannibalism?
No,
Oh,
that may have been one of the ways bestiality was capital capitalized. I mean, utilized and all that way
oh, okay.
because they didn't care what it, as long as it was warm.
I got, I
Anyway,
got, I got, I
the
got that.
cannibalism was a whole different
People
side of
of
it.
all walks do all things,
Mm.
and sin don't care who your mom. I almost said Mammy and Peppy. They don't care who they were.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming and it's
Okay.
lurking and wanting you to crouch. It's want to bite you. It wants you
Mm.
to accept it
Right,
because then
right,
it's
right.
gonna rain when you think you raining.
Well,
I'm
then
gonna
we,
tell you a
then
little
we,
history.
then we get to
When we,
genetics.
since you opened that up, we
Mm.
we are in a place where we are basically weeding out supposedly sin. Yes, we talking total hygiene now. Come on with it. We are supposed to be, because we were known before we got here. Now there was something going on before we got here. So God wants all of his glory. So when he tossed them out, he knew that those demonic beings were going to come here for what he loved. And so everything that is in them that is of God is going to go back to God. Not one tittle is going to get left behind. And it's in us. So therefore, you choose this day who you going to serve. It ain't got nothing to do with color.
Okay.
It ain't got nothing to do with sex. But it is proper for the man to stand out front. As the, what you call, the head. Because I felt that today. I didn't want to be lugging around all that stuff. But
I would say that in the sense that we are of a creator and he has given us the fullness of himself in our inner knowledge. And yet we still have to grow into it, mature into it, learn its life lessons, and basically perfect the perfection he created us to be. And it does not say that anyone can tell you what that perfection of yours is, and the go and the or
Because
the
I don't
path
belong to them. I
and,
belong to him.
or the path that you will be on to get it.
So in saying that, before another point is made out of that, I'm gonna lay the line right here. We're not made for ourselves to answer our own questions.
Very well put.
So we are supposed to look to the Father. Amen. It's already, and see the love that he has bestowed upon us. If we receive it, will weed out the terror and the obstructive things that could destroy our paths and us. But we have to choose it. He gave us a will. Okay? So he didn't want to be a dictator like some people. He said, so what dictatorship is going on? What do you call it? Communism?
I would say some of the lesser.
Well, I was comparing it to real world situations so people can relate to what I'm saying.
Okay. Well,
people do choose to instead God can no one love you like the Lord is what I'm saying.
To submit themselves.
Not only is he God, he's not afraid to give you your own will and let you choose. And say he's married to the backslider and still let people talk about him because they don't understand, because they don't know they're acting like the devil, trying to usurp some kind of authority and glory instead of giving it back to God, because he is worthy. But it all comes out in the end, and I'm saying that to say we need to teach our children how precious they are, and God got it. And we need to let our children know true mathematical problems, where they come from. You're not a monkey and you're not a fish. You need to understand, yes, politics happen. They happen then, they happen now. The makeup of a person always comes out in history, sometimes generations later. Their psyche and how unwavering and how dilapidated it may have been, because you get to look at the choices they made for their mates and what happened in their dynamics of their family and whatnot. You can see they weren't wrapped too tight. But you can also see in a family structure as such as the Darwins, because he wasn't wrapped tight. I don't care what nobody say. Not all the way. But he wasn't an imbecile. You know, he wasn't a bumbling idiot. He wasn't a lunatic. He just wasn't wrapped too tight. He was always stating it in his own work. He didn't say that, but he was always unstable and emotional and undecisive about whether his findings were credible. He stated it in his own journaling, in his own findings for years.
Well, I just saw where he felt as though the proof of people's acceptance of it would make him the name most remembered for the ideal that it was.
His family was strong enough to make his work evident and acceptable and go soaring the way it did.
Exactly.
And that's what happened. Exactly. Because of the love of me to my child, sometimes I can be a bit much. Sometimes I may, and see, you see that throughout history. You can see what your intentions are may not be what's best.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Then once you look into the psychological aspects of things as to how it promotes or denotes a certain mindset that people choose to follow with that, it gives evidence of it being on a curriculum, on a scale where certain people are going to learn these things so that they will be in either upholding it or just to the side saying, okay, we see a different story. We see it a different way, but yet and still, this has its popularity, which expands it. And by it being often told over and over and over and over, and also having what is called a school of thought for it.
And see, that's where we give credit and respect to every man for his effort.
Mhm.
It's like you your brother's keeper, and I fix my sister's crown. That's how we say it in our
Okay.
culture. You don't just sit up there and beat a person when they're down for their faults. Um, we are all still a society. We're all still human in the human race. And we need to know how to pick out the bones. And I was listening to you said it was about the single cell, and I was thinking about how I said all living things are shockingly similar because of that single you was talking about and things like that. And I was looking at the DNA strand, the phosphorus and the protein and all that. But but to wrap it all up, there's also common sense and humanity. So when we see that we have a mistake, we don't get too wrapped up in who it was. And, you just simply put your notations on it. And so that's what this was about. Not so much to slam him, because like you said, by the single cell and the way science is, it does make everything look like it might be able to just graft together. But it wasn't evolution, it was things adapting to climate, like tanning and the beaks of the finches and stuff. And see, he wouldn't have known that because that came from John Eatonberg. I'm sorry, that's the college. Came from John Edmonstone. All them journalings and things before he even met that man, that young man at 15 years old. He was already a grown man teaching. So when he got all that literature, and they never seen him again, he just disappeared, unfinished affairs everywhere. What happened to that man, and how you got all that work? See, people out of love can make things disappear too. And I meant to leave that note right there because that's a fact. He disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him. And then he didn't use his work for 20 years. That tells you that's why I say he wasn't too stable. He didn't use I'm sorry. Nothing was accepted that he submitted. None of his work for years. You won't find it. And then 20 years after, here's a book. But none of your stuff was accepted. So how you so great you come up with a book?
Well, we can.
So he came up with a book and then became the father of evolution with somebody else's finches. And that's how I interpret it. And if I offend, I apologize. But as society, this is how it looks. The work, where did the man go? And the pride that you have in the family is still there. Cambrian College, that's huge, a huge success. That's a huge accomplishment for someone to build and do all that. But we're not talking about what they built. We're talking about the influence with that build and how we came.
You must also understand that they had a whole circle or let me see. You could say they had a whole sect of people promoting things in that way, so that they became a leading institution. They became leading institutions. That's the word. They became leading institutions and some said they were the institution of learning. Some were institutions
Yeah,
of
money does that.
yes,
Money,
and
power, influence, allies, people who rub hands and shoulders together. That's why you begin to come up with different parties,
yes, and when they put
political
things out,
parties.
in society, they generally brand them so that they come back and hold into those
They're
same
here today. I
strictness.
started looking into them and it scared me, which is why I'm not speaking what I don't know so strong, because those influences are still here today and have dwindled down into even actors and other streams of society, political even. So yeah, so it is, and even in Manhattan, you can see where Mr. Trump has a lot of pull. I'm very serious. Even though people have pointed out, and so I'm just saying it's important to hit these things if we're going to be about teaching our children things that are correct. And we got to hit it head on and just say, that's why I said what happened to the man. His information, none of his work was ever credible. You have to say it that way because people will still be influenced because of pride. And see, political intelligence knows this kind of stuff when you have masses of people. It's hard to break up a gel that they've put together for people to feel comfortable in as a society. To begin to work it apart is even harder. So that's why I'm saying we have to begin to teach who we are, and we're not animals. We're human beings, and we were wonderfully made. And that is the point that I wanted to make. Are you
Call you back.
okay? I apologize, y'all. And we're gonna get ready to wrap this up. You can put it on do not disturb if you ever come back.
I shall.
Anyway, now I enjoyed you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking out the time to stop working to come over here, just to help me express myself with some
It was
good
a pleasure. It was a
dialogue.
pleasure. Because
And Mr. Mitchell,
opened up some of those thought patterns I had and kind of dismissed, but
yeah,
I wasn't reluctant. So it was good.
I appreciate you, and I want to say thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it today. Total hygiene. We weren't trying to be dismissive, just factual. We're not animals. Charles Darwin was indeed a person, a human being. He was someone's child, someone's husband, someone's relative, and he put in. He was here. He put in effort and everything. But having said all that, his family had a nice legacy and a name. And he did do some things, not like on a bigger scale, but there were some things that were substantiated and he found. And to his credit, they didn't have the information then that they have now. Okay. And respectfully said in his honor. Yeah. And so we just want to know that we have our information correct. And that is evolution is not a real thing, is my point. And having said that, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh Lord, are those comments over there? I apologize. I don't know. I can't see all that. But it's next time we're going to talk about God is.
For sure.
God is, And I'm going to have some other tidbits in there that I'm going to show my producer. But for now, we're going to wrap it up and say thank you for tuning in and have a blessed day.